Imagine this. The air is cold and sharp. Gunpowder smoke drifts through quiet New England fields. The road from Concord to Boston is littered with broken carts, dropped equipment, and exhausted British soldiers retreating in chaos. Now imagine this. From behind a low stone wall, someone steps forward. Not a young rebel, not a trained officer. An 80-year-old man. His hands shake, not with fear, but with age. His coat is worn thin from decades of use. His face is lined by nearly a century of life. And yet, he calmly raises a loaded musket. What happens next should be impossible. But it isn't. Welcome to Believe It or Not, the show where weird is real and the truth is stranger than fiction. I'm your host, Brian, and today's story is about Samuel Whittemore, a man who proves that bravery doesn't retire and that age is no match for determination. Samuel Whittemore was born in 1694, when America was still a collection of distant British colonies, and the idea of independence hadn't even been whispered yet. By the time the American Revolution began, Whittemore had already lived through nearly a century of history. He had fought decades earlier in King George's War, one of the brutal conflicts between Britain and France that swept across North America in the mid-1700s. He knew how to handle a musket. He understood battlefield fear. He had already risked his life for his community once before. After the war, Whittemore retired to civilian life and became a farmer in what is now Arlington, Massachusetts. His days were filled with hard labor, tending land, repairing stone walls, and surviving harsh New England winters. Life was not easy, but it kept him strong. By 1775, Whittemore was a widower and a father. Most men his age were long buried. Others were bedridden, weak, or dependent on family. Not Whittemore. Neighbors described him as physically tough, sharp-minded, and fiercely independent, even in his late 70s. So when British troops marched past his land on April 19, 1775, retreating from Concord after a fierce fighting battle, Whittemore did not panic. He prepared. He loaded 2 pistols and a musket, put on his coat, and quietly positioned himself behind a stone wall overlooking the road. As British soldiers hurried past, exhausted and scattered, Whittemore took aim. First shot. 1 soldier fell. Second shot. Another dropped. When the British finally noticed him, they charged. The enraged soldiers shot him in the face, bayoneted him at least 6 times, some accounts say up to 13, and clubbed him with musket butts. Believing no human, especially an 80-year-old, could survive such wounds, the soldiers left him bleeding on the ground. But this wasn't the end of Whittemore's story. Hours later, when colonial forces found him, he was still trying to reload his musket to keep fighting. Doctors were stunned. A local doctor named Cotton Tufts thought his wounds were fatal and only treated him at the insistence of family and friends. Back then, musket balls were rarely removed safely. An infection was usually fatal. Yet old Whittemore endured surgery without anesthesia, survived massive blood loss, and slowly recovered. And then came the most unbelievable part. After healing, Samuel Whittemore returned to normal life. He continued living independently. He remained mentally sharp. He watched the Revolutionary War unfold, eventually witnessing American independence at an age almost no one else reached. After Whittemore's one-man battle, he lived another 18 years. When Samuel Whittemore died peacefully in 1793, at the age of 98, he wasn't remembered as a victim. He was remembered as a symbol. A reminder that courage doesn't fade with age, and that sometimes history is shaped by the people you'd least expect. Now, here are a few believe it or not facts about Samuel Whittemore and the Revolutionary War. Samuel Whittemore is officially recognized as the oldest known combatant in American Revolutionary War or any American war history. At 80, he was decades older than most soldiers, many of whom were teenagers, old enough to be their father, their grandfather, and in many cases, even their great-grandfather. Believe it or not, Whittemore survived the battle, that brutal attack, and went on to enjoy 18 more years of life, dying of natural causes at the age of 96. Long enough to see the United States win independence and even witness George Washington's presidency. His obituary noted that he lived to see the complete overthrow of his enemies. And believe it or not, at his death, he reportedly had 185 descendants, all free Americans. Believe it or not, this wasn't the first time Whittemore fought as a senior citizen. Some accounts claim that he fought against the French in the French and Indian War at age 64, and even against Native Americans in 1763 at the age of 67. Believe it or not, unlike Whittemore's victims, the war's deadliest killer wasn't battle. More soldiers died from diseases like smallpox than from combat. Nearly twice as many, prompting George Washington to order the first widespread inoculation of troops in military history. These days, we think of the American Revolution as a war that all of the colonists could get behind, a popular war among Americans. But believe it or not, support for independence was far from unanimous. At no point in the war did more than about 45% of colonists actively support the revolution, and at least a third remained loyal to Britain, making it as much a civil war as a fight against the crown. And many of those switched sides based on who controlled their area. They didn't so much care about who was in control, just that someone was in control. And finally, believe it or not, Whittemore wasn't the only odd combatant in the American Revolution. A woman fought disguised as a man for over a year. Deborah Sampson, at age 21, dressed as a man named Robert Shutterleaf and served in the Continental Army for nearly 18 months, fighting in battles until a fever revealed her identity. She was honorably discharged and later received a war pension. Believe it or not, Samuel Whittemore didn't just witness history. He charged into it. Samuel Whittemore teaches us that courage doesn't belong to the young. It belongs to the committed. It belongs to people who decide that something matters enough to act, even when the cost is high. So think about this. If fear, age, or doubt weren't holding you back, what would you stand up for? Samuel Whittemore proved that you're never too old to make history. And if someone ever tells you, you're too old for that, just remind them, an 80-year-old once took on the British Army and lived to tell the tale. Next time on Believe It or Not, we're meeting Mitzi Nichols of Virginia Beach, a woman who once anonymously donated a kidney to save a stranger's life. And years later, she scratched a lottery ticket and won $500,000. Good luck, good karma, or something truly unbelievable? Before we wrap things up, here's a friendly reminder. If you're enjoying